We're at the 100-day mark of the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. But for today's explainer, we aren't just reading the headlines. We're looking at this investigation strictly through the methodical, meticulous lens of retired FBI agents. We're going to break down exactly how federal law enforcement tackles a massive, high-stakes abduction when the trail, at least to the public eye, seems completely cold.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Just look at this stark reality laid out by retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jason Pack. The cameras may move on, the investigators usually do not. You know, when a high-profile missing persons case hits that brutal 100-day milestone with zero public suspects, it is so easy to assume the investigation is just frozen. But as you'll see today, public silence absolutely does not mean a cold case. Behind the scenes, the forensic grind is really just getting started. Here is our case docket, a quick roadmap of what we're covering. 1. The Nancy Guthrie case. 2. Recovering residual digital data. 3. Analyzing the biological evidence. 4. Ransoms and public appeals. And finally, 5. Why investigations require patience.
Starting off with Section 1, the Nancy Guthrie case.
So Nancy Guthrie, who you likely know as the 84-year-old mother of Today's Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, vanished from her home in Tucson, Arizona on February 1st. As we sit here in mid-May, well over 100 days have passed, and we're dealing with a pretty stark contrast right now. There are 0 confirmed suspects publicly identified, yet authorities confirm there are highly active forensic reviews underway. To us on the outside, it's an agonizing silence, but to the FBI, that silence is just the sound of scientists and agents doing the exhausting, invisible work.
Moving to Section 2, recovering residual digital data.
Television shows kind of give us this completely skewed instant gratification view of how digital data is recovered, right? But let's walk through the actual timeline of the camera tampering at Nancy's home that night. According to the Pima County Sheriff, at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera is disconnected. Then, at 2:12 a.m., one of the cameras detects a person. But here's the catch. Because the home wasn't signed up for a specific cloud storage service, that vital video footage was quickly overwritten. To anyone on the outside, it seemed lost forever. Yet on February 10th, recovered footage was suddenly released to the public. So how on earth did they do that?
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer horsepower the FBI brings to a case. They didn't just throw their hands up and accept that the footage was gone. Step 1, FBI Director Kash Patel engaged directly with Google's leadership. Step 2, that massive leverage allowed investigators to access what they call residual data, which is hidden deep within the back-end systems of the Nest camera infrastructure. And Step 3, agents meticulously reconstructed the overwritten surveillance footage. They quite literally pulled the suspect's image out of the digital ether.
So what did that reconstructed data actually reveal? It painted a chilling, really vivid picture of a highly calculated suspect. The individual on the porch was wearing a ski mask and a backpack. The video shows a gloved hand raising up to the camera, and then the person holding a flashlight in their mouth while using prairie brush to cover the camera lens. They clearly knew the camera was there. Furthermore, law enforcement sources noted a possible firearm visible on the front of the suspect's belt. This was not some random, bumbling break-in. This was someone prepared and deeply aware of their surroundings. This tells investigators for sure that they aren't hunting an amateur, which drastically shifts how they profile the suspect.
Let's jump to Section 3, analyzing the biological evidence.
We really have to talk about the CSI effect. Pop culture completely trains us to expect instant lab results, right? You feed blood into a glowing machine and boom, a suspect's face pops up on a screen 5 seconds later. But the FBI reality is entirely different. Forensic teams found unidentified blood on the porch and pathway outside the Tucson home. First, they sent it to a private lab and then shipped it off to the FBI's state-of-the-art laboratory in Quantico, Virginia. Isolating an unknown DNA profile that currently has no database match takes months of enhancing low-level samples, running complex forensic comparisons, and building massive genetic family trees.
And while the lab grinds away on the DNA, analysts are looking at the blood spatter itself. Listen to this deduction from retired FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell. Looking at the scene, she noted, no voids in the blood pattern. She may have been carried rather than moving on foot. This is exactly how seasoned agents read a crime scene differently than the rest of us. A void would indicate footsteps interrupting the drops of blood. The complete absence of those voids points to the chilling possibility that Nancy Guthrie was incapacitated and physically carried away.
Another huge reason forensic science requires so much patience is a process called elimination work. Investigators aren't just hunting for the bad guy. They have to methodically rule out completely innocent people. For example, early in the case, searchers found a pair of gloves 2 miles from the house. They extract the DNA, track it down, and it traces back to a local restaurant worker who had absolutely zero connection to the crime. That takes time, manpower, and resources, but it is an absolutely necessary step to ensure the integrity of the investigation.
Which brings us to Section 4, Ransoms and Public Appeals.
This case has unfortunately attracted some truly bizarre and cruel interference. An anonymous tipster sent letters claiming that Nancy's dead, but paradoxically also claimed to have seen her with kidnappers down in Sonora, Mexico, just across the border. The tipster demanded a massive digital payout of 1 Bitcoin to deliver the kidnappers on a silver platter. But because they offered zero verifiable proof of life or death and refused to cooperate without upfront digital payment, the FBI is carefully navigating this but actively treating it as a highly likely scam.
To combat the silence, an incredible financial incentive is on the table. $1,052,500. That is the combined reward pool right now. It consists of an unprecedented $1 million put up by the Guthrie family, $50,000 from the FBI, and $2,500 from local Crime Stoppers. And this isn't just about the money. It is a highly strategic tool designed to apply intense psychological pressure on anyone who might have even tangential knowledge of the crime.
This ties directly into the family's media presence. Savannah Guthrie recently made a highly publicized return to her anchor chair on the Today Show. Retired FBI Special Agent Steve Moore points out that while the kidnappers themselves might be purely evil, somewhere somebody down the line that knows them does have a conscience. Returning to television is a tactical move. It keeps Nancy's face right there in the living rooms of America, subtly working to persuade someone on the periphery of the kidnapper circle, perhaps someone heavily tempted by that $1 million reward, to finally pick up the phone.
Section 5, Why Investigations Require Patience.
Look, 100 days feels like an absolute eternity to a grieving family and a worried public. I get it. But in federal investigative terms, it can still be early days. Because behind the public silence, the case agents are in a constant, relentless grind. They're re-interviewing witnesses to see if their stories have changed. They're sorting through thousands of old tips with fresh eyes. They're reviewing countless hours of intersection surveillance footage. And they are hunting for those microscopic clues in that DNA data over at Quantico.
So the crucial point is perfectly captured here by Jason Pack. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come not from dramatic confessions or Hollywood-style moments, but from patient analysis and one tiny inconsistency that finally breaks a case open. That is the absolute reality of the FBI's work. They are methodically searching for the one single detail that just didn't fit the very first time around.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. As the scientists at Quantico continue to isolate that unknown blood profile, and cyber agents continue to scour the reconstructed ring camera data, after 100 days of silence, what tiny unnoticed detail in the digital data, or DNA, will eventually break this case wide open? The answer is out there, waiting to be found by those who absolutely refuse to move on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and we will definitely keep watching as this meticulous process unfolds.